Welcome to the Inner Space Covent Garden talk. Our talk today is Mastering Self-Mastery. Is it possible? I guess is a question that first jumped into my head. Because how often do we find ourselves inadvertently trying to control our circumstances or the people in our life? The only thing we can truly control is ourselves. We know that. But can we? Are we really in control of ourselves? Are we masters of our mind, our emotions, even our habits? So to gain mastery over oneself, if we were to do so, we would be better managing our circumstances, and perhaps we'd find more connectivity in our relationships. However, it does feel a little exhausting if we were to keep trying to master self-mastery. So is there a balance between trying to master self-mastery or experiencing that and just being okay with where we are at today? We've asked our speaker to share how to embrace our limitations and yet strive for mastering self-mastery. Sharona Stillerman studied at the University of Sorbonne in France and for 15 years worked as a senior lecturer in English at Boston University. She's currently based in Tel Aviv and is the director of the Brahma Kumaris in Israel. I know over the years of her working in Israel, she's worked at developing positive relationships in communities and between communities, as well as neighboring countries and states. So it's been her journey to always bridge and bring joy. Sharona is going to be sharing with us for the next 40 minutes, and after that she'll do a short meditation. It's just 3 minutes, and the idea is that you allow what you've heard to settle into your psyche and have access to use it from tomorrow morning. After that, she'll take your questions. So please send in your questions via the question and answer link or via the chat, and it will be my pleasure to take those questions and put them to Sharona on your behalf. Sharona, thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Arti, and thanks for this wonderful program. I remember when you used to offer this program in person in different areas of London, and the audiences were always amazing, very alert, very enthusiastic and sincere effort makers. So I imagine that this audience is the same. It's interesting because I enter this topic from a slightly different doorway. And maybe we end up at the same place that Arti was talking about it, but I was kind of assuming that if you're here, if you're listening to this, you've already understood that something very important for my happiness is this thing called self-mastery. Now, you probably don't call it self-mastery. I know I didn't ever use that word before I started my spiritual studies, but you probably just called it being able to control yourself. And that turns out to be not just a very important aspect of well-being, but a huge one, because like Arti was saying, we've lost a lot of energy to give to this while our attention has become a little bit more externally focused rather than internally focused. Like Artie was saying, somehow we've ended up needing others to change and trying to control the change processes of others. Or we've needed situations to change. And we've tried to control those situations. Aside from this proving to be not really effective, if it works, it's usually only quite temporary or superficial. It's like it drains the power that we need to bring our attention inward. Now, I'm not saying that we're passive about other people's mistaken ways, or we're passive about situations which are wrong. But the ability to bring to the challenging people in our life and the challenging situations in our life needs a lot of power. And actually, that power is something that we were all raised with, but it would seem like society doesn't promote it that much anymore, which is virtue, principles, values. So let me come to all the difficult, challenging people or situations in my life. But if I can come to them, even if I have to take a stand, but I take a stand with dignity, peace, wisdom, there's a lot more power in it than if I come to these things with the ways of the world, which are often as not stubbornness, ego, anger, selfish motives, like that. So we hopefully end up clarifying for ourselves an aim, which is that I should be able to control old world kind of reactions in myself and especially the strategy I've been using over the last few decades is replace them, not suppress them, but hit them with everything you can know about the truth of virtue and principles and value-based living. Everything you've ever experienced about goodness inside you. In which case you're not ignoring your anger or your arrogant reactions to things, but you're actually facing them with something far more powerful. It's kind of like you've got a lot in the backyard and it used to have only flowers or vegetables, but you've not paid attention to those flowers or vegetables. And so the weeds have taken over. So to know about virtue and qualities, principled living, and to begin to activate these as a power in your own self. That's not even pulling the weeds. That's like spraying the ground with weed killer and watching them just begin to shrivel up. So it's a kind of two-pronged approach. My increasing faith that principled living, virtues and qualities are a power, and I'm learning about them and activating them and using them. That's the kind of like spray, which just begins to shrink those weeds. But then again and again, making the conscious choice in any moment where my old programmings are triggered to go for what this research is offering me, to try a principle, to try a virtue. That's cultivating the flowers. So we're not ignoring the weeds, but we're going to be putting a lot of attention on these flowers once again, so that inside me literally can be the fragrance and the beauty of an inner garden instead of an inner desert or forest, or jungle of thorns. Don't know if you're following me through these analogies, but it's just to say that when I saw this topic, and even listening to Artie talk about it, I was kind of assuming that you're here listening to this because you would want more control over the way you respond to people and situations. You would know about self-mastery with whatever word you use for it. Self-control, the ability to rule my own emotions, my own feelings, to rule my choice of words and behaviors. You would all know about it. And yet, one aspect of that knowing, which might need a little bit of reinforcement, is that beyond knowing about these things is really a deep need to be in control, in charge of myself. And this would be because originally, that's how we've been made. We've not been made to be in constant reaction to everything around us, as if we have no power of our own, no wisdom or divinity or dignity. We're not made to just blow with the wind, whatever are the winds, however they're coming at us and from wherever. We do have a rudder in our personal ship of life. We do have a stabilizing force. We do have choices. And I think this is what a good spiritual practice is about, actually. It should increase your awareness of all your choices, meaning the huge variety of virtues and qualities that exist if we opt for a principled lifestyle. So, in case you're not aware that you long to be in charge of yourself, that there's a real deep desire filled with a neediness, just look at how you feel when you lose control. When, according to your programming and conditionings, you're once again being walked all over by everyone, or because of your programmings and conditionings, people maybe aren't taking advantage of you, but they're angry with you and triggering your anger, intolerance, irritability, stubbornness. How do you feel? If you're healthy, if there's some spiritual health in there, you feel bad. Because we're simply not made to live our lives in reaction to everything going around us. And it's not because so many people, whole nations, are actually existing now in reaction to everything going on, that that's right or healthy or normal. We need to respond. We need to introduce another energy into the situation and the relationship. And we are capable of this. We can do this. This is the good news about the subject of self-mastery. But if it's true that you all listening to this understand the concept, and you're here because you really do understand that you need to take charge a bit more of yourself, you need to get yourself a bit more under control, then the thing is how. Because I can tell you, self-mastery has to be approached completely differently from how we approach the mastery of anything external. What I mean is, typically, like I was talking earlier with Arti about my love for the Olympics and gymnastics in particular, you can only imagine the incredible amount of work, effort, attention, determination those athletes had to have been bringing to their life to accomplish what we see on the TV screen, let alone win a gold medal. Or you see these virtuoso violinists, sometimes they come up on the screen in YouTube, even young children. They are pouring away at that violin, so intense, and all the emotions on their face. And you can understand that they also would have been very focused, with huge amount of intensity poured into cultivating this mastery. The gymnasts, mastery over the body. The musicians, mastery over a violin, an instrument of music. This kind of intenseness involving stress, tension, pressure, which most athletes talk about, and also musicians, unfortunately. This cannot be the strategy we use for mastery of the self. And I bring this up because I certainly wasn't aware of this. Growing up, I loved perfection. I didn't know that. I wouldn't have had the words for that, but I was always striving for excellence in whatever I did. I just felt that that was right. That was to respect my teachers, my studies, my music teachers, the conductor of the orchestras I would be in, whatever. I just felt that was to take everything. To take everything seriously was to respect it. And I became an extremely disciplined creep in the sense that nobody really likes strongly, horribly intense, disciplined people, which is what I made myself into, striving for that mastery, not self-mastery, but mastery over all these external things. And where I could really relate to what Arti was saying in the introduction and also talking about this lecture in the paragraph written up about it is that, it can get pretty exhausting, this subject of taking charge of the self, controlling the self, if you haven't understood that the doorway into self-mastery is easiness, a lot of lightness. And that's something a lot of us don't have anymore, especially because this articulation, I must control myself, usually comes from people who have succeeded in controlling many things in their life, controlling their vocation. I mean, in the sense that they had an aim and they worked hard to reach it. So they bring that same kind of hard work ethic to this inner work. And that is not the strategy. The strategy is to take hot baths and fragrant oils and salts, massages, and research and explore things like peace or inner calm or self-love. Again, a spiritual study will help us with this because, and I mentioned this before, we're not trying to invent flowers. Inside, originally, is a lot that once was a beautiful garden. I lost that. I didn't pay attention to my inner garden. The attention was distracted. And I ended up looking outside for some of that fragrance and that beauty. But the original template of this famous self we're talking about when we're interested in self-mastery is flower-like, fragrant with virtue, qualities, principles. It's how we were made. So I'm not inventing flowers. I just have to get to that space that's been neglected and start cultivating those virtues, those qualities once again. And that has to be done with quiet, with gentleness and kindness. You can work on each individual negative characteristic, like have to control my anger, have to control that ego, stubbornness, rejecting, all the progeny of ego, anger, for example. You can work on them one by one, individually. But actually, a generic antidote like that spray, weed spray I was talking about before, is just to start researching and experimenting with kindness. Kindness to others, that might be a place to start, but also kindness to my own self. Kindness to my own self. Gentleness, forgiveness, accepting. Because I keep underlining this, the flower garden is there. the flowers, the seeds are there. They need my attention. And the more I research virtue, the more I sit in yoga meditation and I experience the energies of peace within or love, the more I reach for those in a challenging moment in a relationship or a situation, the more those flowers will grow. It's a very different tactic when the thing is you are what you're looking for. You have what you're looking for versus going out there and trying to find or build it for yourself. So steps to easiness, because I really feel that it is time for humanity to remember important things like who we really are, the inherent divinity and goodness of the self. And so, how to make it easy? One thing I was thinking about is that it is useful to understand this self a little bit more. This space inside us, which I refer to as a garden, a neglected garden, but still a garden. You can call it the spirit, the self, the soul, but actually it's made of 3 different things. And in understanding these 3 things, we also have a better understanding of what exactly we want to start controlling, what exactly needs to be mastered. Most of us would say, my mind is driving me crazy. And in this day and age, with so much stimulus to the senses, with all our devices, it's a big challenge to be in charge of your own mind. And before you know it, scenes that had flashed on a screen that you've been looking at for far too long, that's what keeps coming up to your mind. Instead of your power to manage and work with the people around you, enjoying relationships, and planning a next wonderful gathering. We can be overtaken, completely overtaken by what's going on in the world outside as it comes to us through the screen. And it all projects itself onto my mind. So definitely we want to take charge of this mind. Without it, even without our conscious desire, it can become filled with such stupid things, wasteful things at the best, and at the worst, negative things, violent things, reactive things. So the mind, it's in there, and that's what we want to take charge of. But the mind is not alone inside this self, this thing we call the self. There is also something that you could call the knower, the wise knower, your conscience. It does know the difference between right and wrong. And if it's healthy, it would never let the mind just come up with anything and put it into action. It would filter it and allow to come into action some kind of thought which is productive and good. So inside is not just the mind. There's also this conscience, or the knower, the wise you. And thirdly, there's your programmings and conditionings. those drive your habits, right? So it's all these three things that we really want to take charge of. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to completely understand that I am separate from all of these. It's like the mind, the knower, the conscience, and my programmings and conditionings. They're like organs of my physical body, but these are like organs of the spirit, the self. They're not me, they're what enable me to express myself. We even say it. My mind is driving me crazy. We don't say, I mind am driving me crazy. My mind. So whose mind is it? This mind and this knower, the wise voice, and my programmings and conditionings. My programmings and conditionings. They're not me, they're separate. If we can experiment with that a bit, that's a first step in the direction of taking control, instead of having my mind control me. My programmings and conditionings control me, and the wise voice being so disregarded for so long, we don't even hear it. You know, another way we speak of this wise voice is that inner voice. You know, we speak about it. You know, I knew I shouldn't have done that. I knew I shouldn't have said that. A little voice told me. It's not a little voice. Originally, it's a very big voice. It's the voice of your truth. It's the voice of your beauty, but ignoring it for one reason or another over too long a time, and it's just gotten very weak. It's a very weak voice now. So it can't do its job of selecting which thoughts I'll think and overriding old programmings and conditionings. I'm just checking our time. Oh, I want to do a little exercise with you, just to show you how much your thoughts, your mind is not you. And how easy it is actually, once becoming aware of this, you can step back from those thoughts and just observe them. And then choose, switch to thoughts which are more reflective of who you aspire to be and actually who you really are. So just take a moment, see if we can do this rather quickly, to envision a stream. You're out in the countryside somewhere, and there's a stream. And you're standing by the stream, and you're just observing it. And you bring that picture to your mind. In the countryside somewhere, and a stream. And you're just observing the stream. Now here's the question. Where are you in that picture? Some people say that they actually found themselves floating above the stream, looking down. Many others say they were standing by the stream. If you were able to create this visualization, I can promise you that at least 99% of you, 98, would have been either above or by the side, but you would not be in that water. You would not be in that water. Because with a visualization like this, we're actually appreciating this stream is like the stream of your mind, stream of your thoughts, your thinking patterns. If we had more time, we would go into it a little bit more, and we would see exactly how the stream of your mind flows. Is it clear and clean? Does it swirl around and around itself, or does it move smoothly forward? Doesn't matter what is its state. The interesting thing about this exercise is that nobody, hardly anybody, finds himself in that water. There is the capacity to know yourself as separate from that stream of your mind and observe it as something separate from yourself. And once you've experimented with that, it's very easy to step back, step away from that stream, especially if it's muddy or not fresh smelling or rushing about, making too much noise. You don't even have to change your mind. Just step back from it. Because the mind isn't the only thing that's in there, right? And if we step away from the mind, we can find ourselves as if in the whole beautiful countryside surrounding that stream of the mind. And that's a good meditation, just to see that, to put yourself there. What you're doing is giving yourself very nice thoughts. You're in a countryside, blue sky, gentle sun. But the thing is, it works. You will find yourself becoming very peaceful, very centered. And when you come back to your mind, you'll realize that you've taken charge. You've brought these feelings of peace and calm to whatever had been the state of your mind before. These are like little experiments to do. And I would say that one of the keys that to keep the eye on up to now is this word choice. Self-mastery could easily be summed up as the result of remembering that I have a choice. I have a choice about how to see things. I have a choice of what kind of feeling to bring. I have a choice. Once I can separate myself from that stream of my mind, observe it, I can create any kind of thought or feeling I want. And as I put that into the relationship, that into the moment, that into the difficult situation, I'm watering flowers. They will grow. And my original nature of being just and wise, centered, is being cultivated too. And if there's some time, I would like to just follow up with one or two more tips about this self-mastery thing so that we don't exhaust ourselves in the process.
Please do share your tips.
Yeah. First is control your relationship with your devices. Start it as an experiment. Whatever time you get up in the morning, 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, until whatever, maybe just 2 hours, or maybe 5 hours, or maybe just 1 hour, not allowing yourself to touch it. The activity, energetic, electromagnetic radiation coming from these devices are bleeding our inner strength to do all the things I've just been talking to you about. That's number one. But number two, it keeps flooding us with so much extra thoughts, feelings, as if we didn't have enough to be managing. That just keeps flooding it more. But the most important thing is how it weakens us. So experiment with that very important relationship, the relationship you have with your devices. And if you work and you're in front of a computer the whole time, then try it on the weekend. There is unbelievable capacity that gets released when we free ourselves from this, the control that this has over our vital energies, the mind, and our wise voice, and our programmings and conditionings. And another thing I would suggest is, whenever you can, it might be just on the weekend, but experiment with holding something silent in your mind. There'll be lots of chatter going on, lots of this and lots of that, but if you have any kind of spiritual practice, if you have any kind of positive thinking work, study your affirmation, your paragraph or two, and hold that, visualize it, feel it as you go about your life. Call it for a whole hour, increase it to 2 hours, a whole morning. I call it inner silence. You might have to talk if there are people around you, but you talk from that space. Or to help you, you put on some kind of badge which just says, I'm experimenting with silence today in your own home. And just tell people in advance that this is what you want to do. It's not silence like beating yourself not to be thinking or overthinking or worrying, no. But flower-like, you're feeding your mind. You're nurturing, watering those flowers by having some very elevated, pure, positive thoughts that you're working with for the next while. Start with an hour. So these are some of the things. All of these feed the baby angel inside. We jump from the flower analogy to the angel because of my favorite story, right? The Hopi Indian chief who was telling his son that there's a wolf and an angel inside me. And the son said, really? And the father said, yeah. And they're fighting. Wolf and an angel, devil and an angel. And the little boy said, so who's going to win? And the father said, the one I feed. So in one way or another, we have to look to tending those flowers, feeding that baby angel, thoughts of positivity, thoughts of gratitude, thoughts of appreciation. These are all very good starting points. Can you do it for 15 minutes only? And then 20, and then 30? It's a practice. And it's a kindness to give to your own self, which is a huge strength and support, let alone comfort, when no one else around you might be offering any kind of kindness. And I would just add at the very end here, anytime you start cultivating those flowers, feeding that baby angel, that is a whole frequency of energy which puts you on the wavelength of the supreme, of the divine. However you define that higher source, which is pure kindness, pure peace, pure love, just pouring on you. So this makes your garden flourish. And the job becomes one of just upkeep. Easy, easy. So that's the idea for the moment. I don't know if you still want a meditation, Arti, or if what we did before was enough.
Oh, please, if you would do a meditation.
Sure, sure. So once again, put yourself in that countryside and visualize a small stream. It's a magical countryside and a magical stream, because this stream is the stream of your mind. And you're just watching, observing this stream of the mind. What's it like? Your mind as a stream, honestly speaking. Does it flow along gently, evenly? Or does it crash its borders, moving too fast? Is it so clean and clear you can see straight to the bottom? Or is it cloudy and muddy? However it is what it is. The realization is that you are observing it. You're not in it. You are separate from this mind. And whatever is its state, you are free, independent. And you can take 3 steps away and slowly turn your back on it to observe now completely different scene. Wide open, gentle quiet of a beautiful countryside, as if in the first day of spring. Blue sky, gentle sun, and you're just taking all of that in. In this way, can we remind ourselves that no matter our habits, emotional or whatever, no matter how crazy the mind can get sometimes, I am free, separate, independent, and able to make a choice of what I'm going to see, what I'm going to observe, and the feelings I'll fill my heart with. And as I carry new thoughts, new feelings of centeredness and wisdom back to whatever role I play in my life or responsibility, there will be a sense increasingly of being the master. Om Shanti.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all the points that you shared with us and the tips that you shared. I love the idea of how it's so easy to detach from your mind and not feel that it's overwhelming you if you just have that image of a river. I loved it. Thank you. There are a few questions that have come in. So let me start with the first. When mental exhaustion takes over, what are the baby steps that we can use to start getting out of that state?
Hot bath. I'm not kidding. Kindness. Be kind to yourself. Your garden self. So it doesn't mean go out to a party with friends and loud noises and alcohol and drinking or whatever. That kind of kindness, but be gentle and be constructive. And make sure that you carve some time out just to be with yourself and do this kind of work, such as I was saying before. Make sure you always have with you some book or some music that is very inspiring for you and supportive of your aim to be a good person. Don't try to do this on your own. There are so many different paths out there. Of course, Brahma Kumaris is also a path, but books, philosophers, your own scriptures, keep right on hand those things which gently, gently remind you that goodness is a power, and originally there's only goodness inside you.
How is it possible to be kind to yourself, other than take a nice warm bath, which I second completely? But what are the other things that enable me to be kind to myself or patient with myself?
Personally, I think there's a lot to be said about getting educated. I think a good spiritual study is to get to know yourself, to create a new relationship with yourself. That mind isn't against you. That mind is like a little spoiled child. You've been giving that spoiled child of the mind all sorts of sugary, garbage, rubbishy thoughts to think. So it's spoiled. And that's all it wants is rubbishy, sugary, bad thoughts, bad food for the self. So taking some time to understand how that mind is just like a child that needs love, needs my care, and needs me to take the upper hand. You can't let a child make decisions or rule you. It's your love which says, okay, this much we're going to watch YouTube or TikTok or social media. And then at 9 o'clock or 1 hour, we're not. It's finished. It's over. Create some borders and boundaries for yourself, but with the gentleness of a mother, not the discipline or the harshness of an athlete who's, I'm saying a stereotype athlete. For all I know, athletes use the same methods I'm talking to you about now, but we can't raise a child with harshness. So understand your mind is like a little child, needs a lot of love. Set up conversations with yourself as if you're the mother, and the programmings, conditionings, and the way they make your mind talk, they're like the children. Play games, like tell this child you can have your dessert, you can play on TikTok, but only after you've eaten your peas and potatoes. In other words, only if first for 20 minutes or so you've studied this passageway, or you've listened to 20 minutes of this good music. Sing, dance, like that.
Lovely, thank you. Is it the same approach for relationships as you've applied to yourself just now? When you're working with people, sometimes people seem to be on a different pace, a different path, a different vision, even though you're both working on the same project. Um, so how can it be? How can you move forward then, without being too tough or a doormat?
Personally, I feel that's a whole nother subject, but it's very connected, right? Because I'm not going to be able to offer a genuinely forgiving attitude or accepting attitude towards someone else's unforgivable and unacceptable ways beyond the extent to which I've done it to myself. So as I'm beginning to experiment with ways I can forgive my own weaknesses, the times I've lost control, the times I've hurt someone, as much as I can, on the basis of beginning to understand who I really am and how being good or trying for goodness is also a way of being kind to my own self. Those experiences, in a very natural way, allow those same energies to move outwards into my relationships and my responsibilities. For two reasons. One, because that energy, first of all, starts activating in me. It's there, so it can flow outward. But also, it's like difficult people and situations are in front of me and not my neighbor in the same way, at least, or even my brother or sister. Maybe they have problems, but not the same ones I'm facing, because of certain laws in the universe, such as the law of karma, which is telling me that nothing happens by accident and everything is happening just to give me a chance to cultivate and develop a bit more firmly some aspect of my goodness. So if I have somebody in front of me screaming at me because I've parked in his parking space and I don't even have a car, I have a choice. I can resort to a programmed, conditioned response, like maybe I just shut down in fear in front of angry people yelling at me. Or maybe I get angry and start shouting back. That's one choice, just to react. But the other choice, and this is a spiritual study which helps us with this, is to remember that even though I don't even have a car, to imagine myself a poor victim is just a game that people play. The law of karma exists, and if this is happening to me, it's because the universe wants me to pay attention to one or another aspect of my virtues or qualities or principled living, which maybe I hadn't been paying attention to. Some aspect of my garden needs more attention, so this situation is there. So if I can just step back just for 1 second, go inside and observe my thoughts, like either anger or fear, and remember things like the larger picture of it all, the laws of karma, and understand that whereas I usually would have just gotten angry or just frozen, my virtues, my qualities give me other options, such as assertiveness or courage. And maybe the whole reason this thing is happening is just because the universe wants to be sure that I cultivate those qualities too. So I try it. I'm stepped back from my stream of thoughts and programmed conditioned thinking. I'm remembering other qualities like assertiveness or courage, setting borders, but peacefully. And I try that. I use that moment to exercise a virtue or quality. Eventually, more and more of my qualities, my inner garden, are going to flourish. And so, like this, once again, those negative tendencies won't have room to grow because the flowers will be taking over. So consider everything an opportunity for a work in progress to proceed forward. What's the work in progress? My inner garden. Honestly, the whole of the universe is set up for us to cultivate, restore the beauty and dignity of our human species. That's actually what's really going on right now. But you need to be able to add to your everyday life a little bit of the larger picture of it all, either by working with scriptures that you relate to, or poetry, or your philosophers, or a proper spiritual path.
Sharona, you've gently introduced us to a topic that can be covered through a lifetime. And it's been very gentle, very nurturing, but also encouraging and inspiring. So thank you very much for taking this time out and sharing your insights with us.